My name is Mike Nakhimovich, and I'm here today to lead a discussion, more discussion than a talk about AI for developer productivity. I'm going to start by giving you a little bit of background of how I got here, why I'm on stage here, and why I'm talking. Folks that may know me from the community know me more of an Android developer. And hello? And then, sorry about that. And then I want to get into a few larger areas, some questions just to kind of frame it. But honestly, we're here for you. We're here for me to have a conversation with all of you, to talk about AI, to talk about the issues that you're concerned about, the strategies and tricks you want to learn. We'll do this more of a Q&A than me just rambling and ranting up here. So to give you an idea, I started my career as a web developer. I was a web developer for the first 5 years of my career, and I started realizing I'm really falling behind. And I was falling behind because all these other people had a ton of experience that I didn't have in back-end development. I was just coming out of school, and I slowly started transitioning to Android development. I was brought to Android because I liked how fast it was moving, I liked that it was new, and I liked that everyone was kind of on the same starting, at the same kind of starting areas of knowledge. Folks weren't going into interviews and having 20 years of experience where I had one. Everyone literally had 1 year of experience at that point. And it drew me to it because it was a culture that was really built on knowledge, on sharing, on community, on open source. So I spent the last decade working in Android. Last year, I made a pretty dramatic career change, at least for myself, and I went all in working in AI. I first worked for a startup on AI robotics, which was still an Android role that kind of got my hands dirty, got me looking at industry, what tools exist, how are things working outside of just mobile development. And recently I started working at Airbnb, and now I've transitioned full-time to working in the world of AI. This is my first non-mobile role in 12 years. So what I want to talk about today, and I don't know if anyone's interested in, what is the transition out of just working in a single platform to what I'm now saying is where Android was a decade ago? We're at the point now where no one knows AI. I joke with people at work, once you get 2 months into it, you're one of the world leading experts in whatever topic you've started in. So this is a journey. This is a journey that I think a lot of us are going to take. Irrelevant of what language you work in, what framework you're working in, there's a shift that is happening in our industry. My job at Airbnb has been easier than any job I've had as long as I can remember. And I have a fairly senior position. I'm a senior staff there. And I've always been underwater being a senior engineer, a staff engineer. And I'm not the greatest developer. I'm not the greatest tech writer. What I'm really good at is being lazy and finding tools that can do what I'm supposed to do at my job. And I think AI has really enabled that more than anything else. So what I want to do today is sort of talk about 5 different areas. But before we do that, does anyone have any questions? Is there anything that anyone is concerned about or wants to discuss or really wants to dive into? Floor's open. We have a microphone. As soon as someone goes up to it, I'll stop rambling. And yeah, we'll just kind of go from topic to topic. Yeah.
I'm not sure if you're going to cover this in your slides, but I'm curious, like for someone who's starting on AI, how did you get started on it? What was your learning like? What were your resources?
Yeah, that's a great question. I first tried to do online courses, and I felt like online courses were much more geared towards ML. Now, I don't know ML. I'm actually a college dropout, to give you even more of my weird story of how I got here. I was not interested in the math aspects of it. I was, but it was just so over my head. Every time I tried to do ML, it said, you have to start with 2 years of math, get through that, you'll get through some Coursera, and you'll get there. What I was interested more is frameworks, into integrations, into how we can leverage developer tooling. I came from a world of developer productivity, and that's where I wanted to continue to lean in. So for me, it was a lot of online sources, same as I did in mobile. Hacker News, by far, is the best place to see where the industry is going. Hacker News is the fire hose. As soon as something new comes out, it's there. I'm on Reddit a lot. I found subreddits that were not mobile development. I found subreddits for Claude, for OpenAI, for Local Llama, which is more of like the local AI development, and just started getting more familiar. What I kind of joke about is anytime I get into a new environment, nothing makes sense. And I just keep rereading those articles over and over again every few weeks, and it starts building up that mental model, and I get to the point where things start making sense. So for me, it was first transitioning my knowledge so that I can be conversational with it, And eventually, I started applying for jobs and figuring out what are the requirements that hiring wants, and just got lucky to one that aligned with what my experience was. Perfect. If no other questions, something that I wanted to dive into is what AI-driven productivity looks like across the software development lifecycle. So when we talk about using AI for dev productivity, I'm not talking about doing something that you're not already doing. You are already doing the software development lifecycle. You are already planning what you're going to write. You're researching, you're coding, you're executing, you're then maintaining, you're landing, you're doing all these different parts that are, this common software development lifecycle that we have. So what we want to do with AI is make all parts of it easier. The areas that I found are really nice first forays into AI is code review. Code review is one of those things that we're not going to replace humans, but just like your code gets reviewed by many humans, now it can be reviewed by many humans and AI. So one really simple surface that I kind of want to suggest for folks to start looking at AI, look at GitHub Actions. If you're using GitHub, hook up a GitHub action that would send your PR to OpenAI, to Claude, to whatever models that you may have available at your work or on your projects, and have it do a code review. Now, you don't want this to be a signal that you're going to start, too much noise and you're going to start ignoring. So you're going to be, it's called prompt engineering, but it's really just fine-tuning the instructions. The same way we fine-tune algorithms, you'll fine-tune what your prompt is to not nitpick, to only do large things. And what we're able to do at work is get to a point where most of the suggestions are accepted. Not that it's making most of the suggestions that are wrong. It's not catching all the issues, but when it does catch issues, people accept those issues. So this is one of those areas that was really easy for get AI into your process, into the review process. Similar into the release process. I no longer release code manually. Instead, I use a tool called Claude Code. It's a command line tool to be able to say, release this branch, look at this other PR I had, and it's able to replicate. So anything where you sort of were able to do it with an algorithm or a script before, but maybe a little dynamic where you have to change some variables, is a really good area to transition to some kind of AI tool. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Hey, Mike. Just a quick question. So with regard to prompt engineering, have you found that there's emerging any patterns for PR reviews in a given code space? Like here's a given good set of prompts or a good way to prompt it that could be replicated across companies? Or is it all more bespoke still where it's like, for our code base and our 2 million lines of code, we should focus on this?
I think it's still pretty generic, and there's enough value in catching the generic problems. While you can have instructions that will be more specific to your best practices, the more concrete way that it can help is if the model is already trained on whatever you're asking it to do. So if you say find security violations and you paste URLs of where security bulletins are, it knows those. It probably already mined through years of those security violations and is able to do that work. But if you tell it to do design patterns you're only doing at Square based on libraries you only have at Square, it's more difficult for it to know what you're doing. Not that it's going to hallucinate, you probably will get more high-level feedback than something that is more specific of, sorry, fragment manager, just if you don't set this parameter to true, it's going to crash in production when you deploy this code.
Okay. Cool, thanks.
Yep. So outside of the release and review process, I'm going to move backwards, is writing code. There's been a lot of advancements in how we work with AI when it comes to actually writing code. Many years ago, we'll rewind again in my head, when I learned how to code, I had my Visual Basic in 24 hours book I got from Barnes & Noble. I had my computer, and I would copy and paste things from the book to my editor and then run it. Years later, we got Stack Overflow, we got the internet, we went to Stack Overflow-driven development. You're now copying and pasting from Stack Overflow to your editor. You're asking the internet questions. At some point,
pair programming became more, not ubiquitous, but kind of started proliferating through our industry. And rather than asking questions of Stack Overflow, you might be pairing with someone, you have two computers, maybe one is navigating, one is driving, one is looking up answers, the other one's committing it. And we even have tools like Code with Me with JetBrains where both people can commit code at the same time. Where we're going now is this pair programming paradigm. Let's extend that to AI. Rather than you pairing with a human, you're now pairing with a coding agent. It's not just something where you're asking it questions and pasting code and actually, actually applying it yourself. We're now in a world where we are passing the tools to these coding assistants. Claude Code is an example. Codex is another example. Google is about to come out with Gemini CLI. These are agentic coding solutions. When you hear agent, think of it as intern. Think of it as delegate. Think of it as something that you can say, hey, open this PR for me. It's then going to call multiple tools. It's going to call, well, what is your Git status? What are your commit messages? What is your API token? And it's able to do multiple instructions to drive tools the way that you drove tools or get knowledge the way that you got knowledge. So now you're navigating, but the LLM is the one that is actually driving. You give it a prompt, you give it an instruction, you say, find the bug on this page based on this JIRA report, based on these best practices, based on these logs, and it can now do things. Claude Code is by far my favorite one of these tools. It can iteratively solve your problem and then give you back a PR, a report, whatever it is that you need. So we're starting, that was a naive version. That's what we had 3 to 6 months ago. And this industry moves really fast. And then we realized, why only have one of these? You have one agent, have multiple. Why don't you ask the LLM to first make a plan, then ask something else, another LLM agent to execute the plan, and a third one to verify the plan. What's nice about this plan, execute, verify type of flow is that you have way less hallucinations. You have way less someone going off stream to do something that you expected it to do. So prior, we would just throw up things and say, hey, what's the answer to this bug? Now we say, solve the bug and verify the bug is correct. Here's how you run the compiler. Keep doing this till it compiles, and only then open the PR. That's where we are right now. Yeah, go ahead. Yes, sir.
I'll use the mic. Hey, great job. This is a great topic. So from a pedagogic or teaching perspective, so as a mentor, for example, when you're working with you kind of drew the analogy of this thing being a pair programmer, maybe even like a mentor. Whereas with a mentor, I know I have this problem sometimes when I'm working on code. I can get really stupid and I can get into a thing where I'm just trying to get the code to work and it's not working and I'm churning and I have to take a step back and say, okay, stop writing code and do a little research and understand more the problem you're trying to solve, or maybe, you know, like the higher level architectural problems you're trying to solve. And what I've found is just with the pair, when I've used like ChatGPT, for example, for pairing on things, it's not good at saying, dude, you need to take a step back and think about what you're trying to solve. What I would do that as a senior mentor, I would say to someone, you know, you do this a lot at work, and a lot of folks here, if you're in this room, you probably have this, where someone will come and ask you a question, and you'll feed them a little bit and say, go work on that for a while. And yes, you know that if you sat there and worked with them, you could solve their problem in a second, but they're not learning if you do that. So you intentionally solve the problem more slowly by making them go off, right? And so I'm getting to a question. I'm not just ranting up here. I apologize. But so how do we get AI to do that? How do I not make my junior engineers sit there and churn all day, blah, 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 and just not only be inefficient, but also not really learning? How do we solve that problem?
Yeah, we build up to it. We're starting at this. This is going to be really naive now of how we do it. Over years, people are going to have better ideas of how to do it. As far as I got with this is that you do a hierarchy of these agentic orchestrators. So you have one that is a judge, a decider. You have another one that is the executor doing the work. The one that is the decider has a prompt that from your years of experience of what you believe is proper development practices, you give it to it. You give it a paragraph. You give it 5 pages. You give it 20 pages of what it means to be a master, a senior, a staff software engineer that can overlook other people's work. And then you have those 2 models run. You tell the one model, I'm working with Claude Code, spawn a sub-agent that's going to be doing the work. But make sure it doesn't go off base. Here's the plan. Here are the bounds. So you have to create the bounds yourself. The bounds could be, if it's working for more than 10 minutes, time it out, pull the plug. But I will say, this is where we're at right now. The models are starting to do this themselves. When I used Claude Code with Sonnet 3.5, yeah, it would just keep churning, and it would get stuck in loops where it would try to change the code, the test fails, it tries to change the test, nothing is working in the code, it keeps going back and forth and gets kind of stuck, and you just need to pull the plug at some point. Claude Code, working with Sonnet 3.7, which came out last year, that one was starting to get a little bit better at, I think I'm going down the wrong path. It just pulled the plug on its own and said, hold on, this isn't working, I can't get to a proper solution, what do you want me to do? With Sonnet 4, which came out, I think a month ago, it now has reasoning, and it has fairly good reasoning. And you could actually pass it something called thinking tokens. So say you pass it 500 words of instruction, you can tell it can use 2,000 more tokens. Think of a token as like a word or some amount of compute budget to think. When you do that and it gets stuck in one of these loops, you're actually going to get thinking tokens and responses coming back where it says, and this surprised me, this happened to me this week, I don't think what I've been doing is correct. Let me backtrack and try a different way to solve this problem. I had it working on a problem where I was trying to migrate something from being an IntelliJ plugin to being a desktop Kotlin app. An hour into the process, it pulled its own plug and said, no, this is not working, this is too complex. They're getting better at that. And they are training models on what effective techniques, what effective code is doing. Adding reasoning models help, but we have this kind of weighing game where the reasoning models get too cute and too smart, and they start commenting out your tests to make the code pass. They want to try to solve the problem by eliminating the problem sometimes. So again, this is where we massage it, this is where we change the prompts, this is when we give feedback back to Anthropic, to OpenAI, to Google, and get it to the point where it stops doing those behaviors and still do the ones that we want. Yep. Do you mind getting up to the mic? Just so they're recording the talk, yeah.
How do you plan such a big migration using AI? How are you testing it and making sure it's doing it correctly?
Sorry, I missed the beginning of your question.
You mentioned that you used AI for a migration, right?
Yes. So migrations is the other large area where LLMs really help. There's a blog post on Airbnb's blog of how we did a migration and knocked 18 months off the development process. It was one engineer working on it. Migrations is one of the ones where last year it was a lot of orchestration, a lot of imperative code of you do step one. First step you do, you gather all the files. Second step you do, you figure out what you need to change. Third step you do, you have to open a PR. And all of these we would usually program with something like LangGraph, with something that has orchestrators and task APIs so that you can chain one thing to another. Now it's getting to the point where the models, again, are getting better at it. So when we did migrations, we do have this pipeline where we say, at the end, open the PRs, write the tests for the migrations, make sure something passes. But we're noticing that things we needed to do, like test handlers ourselves, the model, we just tell it what the tests are, and it's doing that orchestration itself. So migrations, we still check every PR by hand. There's no amount of code that goes through without a human checking it. But what we do have the LLM do, batching PRs. Rather than us opening the PRs manually, we have a LLM step that is going to open 10 PRs at a time, wait till those get reviewed, then open 10 more, and kind of run it as a procedure. So there's still those kind of places that have those workflows, not just ones where it can do the full problems. Think of it as like a hybrid solution. Yes, Michael.
Hey, Mike, thanks for your talk. So you are literally an expert at software development, and that's why you are so good at this. What I'm worried about is our junior developers that are coming up right now that don't have the years of experience that you do, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are on how we bring those people along.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. The analogy someone gave me at work, they got way more gray than me, they looked way older, they said, this is like when accountants got calculators. And half the industry said they can still do this faster with slide rules. I don't know how calculators work. It's a process. We all start off bad at it. You will improve as you go. What I've seen that the improvements outweigh the amount of time you spend investing in it. Just like when we got modern languages, when we got high-level languages, then we got things like Rails that made it even easier to spin things up. This is making your job easier, but at some cost. I found people that love learning, do better with this. This one, we started teasing out a little bit. I found people that like taking on interns on their team to do way better with AI as well. It's delegation. The thing that you need as a skill is to know what part of a task you can delegate to someone, and which, like you said, I've been doing this a long time, I know the right way to do this, I know when to pull the plug. Maybe there's complexity here where the AI will not do it. I will say, try it as, don't have like a sunk cost fallacy here of, I've already been using AI. Sometimes I start with AI, you can't get to the answer, and I pick up my pencil and start doing it manually. But maybe I can have it make some diagrams for me, blow out the problem, analyze my proposal, and do things that may get me to a better solution. So I say integrate it little by little into your workflow. Don't think of this as this is coming for your job. Think of this as this is coming for all the annoying things that you hate doing. This is coming for you having to fix lint violations by hand. This is coming for you having to rebase all your PRs every morning. This is coming for you having to resolve all the comments on all your PRs. These are things that we can do today. Someone's going to show you each one of those workflows, just like when you got to your first job, someone showed you like, oh yeah, stored procedures, way better than just doing straight SQL. We'll learn in the industry and get better at it together.
I have a related question about the learning and experimentation phase. So how important is it to understand the capabilities of an agent and its learning style and its model before you start using it? So for context, something that my team has been struggling with is first the hallucination problem. Like, how do you know when the model is 50% correct versus 80% correct, and how to detect that? And then how do you pick between all your different available options for the task that you have?
Yeah, testing, evals. So evaluations is big in this world. Evaluations is where you take some data set, pass it, know what the result should be, and see how things perform. We noticed that with our code review tools that we use internally at Airbnb. They used to be awful, and only 20% of the suggestions were accepted. Models got a little better, but also our prompt we tuned based on us evaluating against good and bad results that we had. As far as hallucinations, examples help a lot. Being able to give it examples of what's good and bad in system prompt or in some kind of tool calls happen. And I can't remember
That's all right, because I have a follow-up question for the first thing that you answered. So it sounds like you actually set up a testing framework for the models that you're working with, just for you to know what you're working with.
Yeah, you can set ones up yourself, but you can look at external ones as well. Huggingface.com is a site that has a lot of models. It also has a lot of record set and evals. So when I look at agentic coding and new models or new agents come out, I like SweBench. SweBench is a model, SweBench verified, which took 20 random Git repo, not random, but 20 Git repos, found 25 issues per, and figured out what was the change before and after. So what you're doing is you'll pass to your LLM whatever the issue was that someone opened in GitHub. It will try to solve this problem. And then you look at the solution that was the actual PR and compare to that. You could either compare it with another LLM, or you can verify it by running tests to make sure the thing passes. So anytime one of these cool new tools come out, Claude Code was awesome at this, and then OpenAI came out with Codex. We ran SweBench with Codex. It didn't quite do as well, and it didn't quite do as well in our internal benchmark, so we kept using Claude Code for whatever use cases we wanted there. I also think of this from a architecture and infra perspective. If your issue is hallucinations, but you feel comfortable about your architecture, sometimes it's just waiting. Sometimes you just have to wait for the models to catch up. It's a James Cameron Avatar problem. He knew what he wanted to do. The models weren't able to do it yet. But over time, they do hallucinate less, they get better, and you'll be able to plug in newer models to whatever your system is right now. So I think the investment here is more in the guardrails and the systems than actually picking a particular model and going in on one particular LLM. Yes, sir.
Hello, hi. I just had a question regarding the migration that you mentioned and how you guys are raising PRs after compiling the code. But I'm curious, how do you identify the runtime errors and by just running the app and doing regression for the existing experience and making sure the migration is same as the existing experience and it's consistent? Is there a framework you guys have for runtime errors?
It depends. So it depends how big the migration is and what the team. I'm more on the infra side of it. We kind of give them steps that they can delegate to of what to do in the planning, what to do when it's actually migrating, what to do when it needs to find files. It depends. Some use a validation step. If it's code that if a migration is just updating version from one to another, it's going to compile or it's not going to compile. Yeah. If it's something bigger where we're like changing testing frameworks and now the test logic may change, we may try to do 2 passes of having another LLM judge whether the before and after is this, like do the code review with another model, or try to write some kind of test, maybe use like a refactorer, kind of like some kind of AST transformation to validate whether it seems like what this is correct. But at the end of the day, nothing's better than code review. People have to review it and see what the changes are. That was always the case if someone's doing a migration without AI or AI. This is letting you do it faster. It's not necessarily adding more integrity to your process.
But like, my question is more regarding like, let's say you do like a simple migration from like Java to Kotlin or something, and you just like, the code compiles, it runs, but there's like some use case where it causes a crash or something. But like, how do you identify that particular use case? Even after like the LLM, like does the code review, like you still need to run through like the regression test cases or some sort of test cases that you have for that particular flow, just to make sure that it works. Like, how do you do that? Like we do it manually by like running on the device and like, going through the app. But like, how do you do it? Is there a framework for that?
Sometimes like that. So if it's a big migration, if it's something that we have to make sure it's payments, it's something that is like accounting, you have to do a full regression test, you have to get your QA team involved, you need to make sure that you're manually testing the things that needed to happen. I wouldn't say that every migration is primed to be an AI migration. Some inherently have more danger. The ones that you may want to try to target are the ones that are less dangerous, but also have no funding and no one is working on it. So it's almost, we're making this stab at it. It'll be cheaper for a human to validate it than having to do the migration and validate it. So I think we're just trying to eliminate the amount of work, not necessarily, there's no magic there.
Yeah, so there's basically like a manual step of QA involved. Like
there has to be. And for many companies, if you're in finance or really healthcare, like many companies just for compliance, you cannot deploy something to a production without a human looking at it even now. That stays the same in an LLM world.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
Hi. I would consider my skill level now to be somewhere between senior and staff, and I've had the good fortune to have a couple of experiences now where I've built an app from scratch on my own. And so the great thing about that is getting all this experience, learning about how to get through the design phase, do the back-end code, do the Android code, do the iOS code. Like, I'm a full stack engineer. But the thing is that it's double-edged because that kind of takes a lot of time. So the design phase might take 2 months. Building the back end might take 3 months. Building Android might take another 3 or 4 months. I'm curious now if you think we are now, or maybe in the future we'll be at the point where my role might shift from being the person that kind of builds everything, gets involved in all the intricacies of how everything is soup to nuts, top to bottom, built and works, to more being like, maybe AI, I'll feel like I have a team of engineers that are all AI that are doing the things for me, and my role kind of shifts to being the code reviewer that kind of merges everything and makes sure everything's going to play well together from different systems and different aspects of the same system.
We're getting there. I know Mike Wolfson asked a question. He's somewhere in the audience, and maybe he ran away, but that's an Android engineer over there that was building JavaScript apps last year and building backends just all LLM based. And he's pretty good at Android. He's pretty bad at other things. And we're there. We're at the point where someone can build a Python. I'm coding Python at work. I'm awful at Python. I can barely read it. It's able to do the web services I need to back. Like, I know Flask is a thing, but that's as far as I got in Python. And yes, if you have specialty in one platform and you were doing everything, you're one of the great candidates for working with AI. You were explaining the problem to yourself and doing it, you're going to have no trouble explaining it to something else and iterating. You'll find your nice workflow for plan, execute, verify. So you may want to start with, have an LLM write the plan, you manually look over the plan, you hand it over to another one that's actually going to do it. For you as a tool, I would recommend Roo Code. Or Cursor. They're both VS Code based and kind of have these different archetypes or roles or ability for you to kind of have different modes. So you can say this is a back-end mode, this is a front-end mode, and kind of toggle between them to better tune whatever the prompt is for doing it. If you're doing something generic, yes, it could spin up a Spring backend, connect it through a DAO to a database, do OAuth for you, and all of those like little wiring things have become dramatically easier at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Just to piggyback off of that, so I develop MCPs for my work, but I'm also by myself, so I don't get to iterate with a team talking about the different tech stacks for this. I was wondering, since there is the capability to do, hey, I'm bad at Node TypeScript, but I'm just doing it full time now. When you look at the agentic frameworks and the tools that are available, and they're all being built right now, how do you evaluate which agentic framework you're going to run with for a while? Do you reevaluate them after a while? Things like Coog and LangChain are coming out and getting support for different models and different providers, different capabilities all the time, as well as like the whole MCP spec, which is just bananas because no one's implemented anything yet.
Yeah, it was a little loud, but I think the question I heard was, how do I evaluate different tools as they're coming out without kind of like jumping? And you need guiding principles. Just like anything else, when Ruby came out, did you all become Ruby engineers? You had some kind of mental model of, is the juice worth the squeeze? So if you're working on it alone, it's really easy for you to switch to whatever's latest and greatest. And like Gemini is going to come out in a few days with their CLI. You can try it. You can switch. You don't have to rewrite documentation. You don't have to train other people. While churn for folks that are working at companies is much greater, and you need to find that balance of how much of a step function are these new tools to make it worth you having to change your process. One way to do this is make abstractions around it. It's really easy with LLM backends. There's a tool called Light LLM. It's an open source gateway that can connect to many different backends. It normalizes it all to OpenAI compatible, and that's it. Now when you're building your layer, your front end, your back end apps, whatever, you're just using OpenAI adapters and OpenAI libraries, where in the back, you might be using Sonnet, you might be using Gemini, you might be using local models, but that's an easy change. So think of it all as protocols, abstractions, more than you do individual things, but when it comes down to like actual implementation, I'm an early adopter, I go to the next thing, it falls over, I hate myself at night, and I catch up in the time. Other people sort of, go a little bit slower to find what it is. I think the bar right now is that Cursor is pretty good as an IDE. We have plugins that are working in IDEs as well, like in IntelliJ, not so much in Xcode yet. And yeah, it's speeding up. It's definitely getting better faster. I say if you're not using Claude Code today, and I know I've said that name a few times, try it. It's really given dramatically better results than anything else as of like yesterday. Maybe by the time this is talk online, it all changes.
What kind of metrics are you folks using internally to see that there's actually a statistically significant difference in developer productivity?
I'm pausing because I'm trying to figure out how much I don't think I can answer this question because Airbnb lawyers will see the recording.
Yeah, it's calm, it's calm.
And I would not be able to get into particular ones, but it's very similar to general developer productivity metrics that folks use.
Like Dora type?
Yes, Dora is one of the, exactly. Aspects of Dora framework would be one of the ones. I forget what the other one was called, but yeah. All of the usual metrics that you check of like how much do developers code, how many bugs do you have, there's not much that we do that is specific to AI, more A/B testing between non-AI users and AI users to see what the differences in productivity is.
And if you can say, is it like an order of magnitude difference from pre-AI to post-AI?
I can tell you that we hope to achieve 30% efficiency in the coming months. So we hope that a team of 3 people can do the work of 4 people, just about there. Long term, I think it's going to be about 50% speed up of what developers are, but it's too early to. One, it's too early, and two, it scares half the room anytime you say it, because
Yeah.
half goes,
Yeah.
half my job is going to get replaced, or I'm going to have half the team. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, we're last 5 minutes. We'll just keep doing questions. And yeah, before you start on your question, I just wanted to say something that I say at the beginning of a lot of these talks. I can't believe any of this works. I can't believe AI works. I can't believe it's helpful. I can't believe this is useful. I was a non-believer. I thought this is all witchcraft and silly, and it's like Bitcoin. And oh my God, is it helpful and useful and hilarious that we're using witchcraft for coding now. Okay, thank you.
I agree, it's unbelievable. Given the audience in this room, particularly the managers, I think it's really important to talk about the culture around adopting tools, making sure everyone on your team can innovate. Are there things that have worked for you at your company that have made it easier for people to identify which models are better or not, or is it just you pretty much testing out different kinds of like agentic tools or whatever?
Surprisingly, it's pretty organic. We do have a small team, AI for Dev Productivity, which is 4 people at this point. We have a working group of about 20, but we started seeing within the last few months, changes are coming from everywhere, and all different teams are starting to spin up of like, oh, there's this new MCP server. Think MCP like REST for LLMs, or oh, there's this new technology. And it's a lot of these kind of workshops, a lot of getting people in a room, a lot of code labs, and a lot of just conversation, because honestly, it's moving so fast. By the time someone writes their 20-page proposal, it's not worth it anymore. So it's really conversational to try to figure out what we need to do, and we try to keep roadmaps really small. Rather than projecting what we're doing for 2 years, can we predict what we're doing for 2 months, 3 months, 6 months is as far out as I think anyone can think with AI.
And I guess a follow-up is, it's probably easier for companies with, more cash to just say, hey, go expense, this new Claude or this new whatever. It might be worth talking about, is it worth it? I think the answer is yes, but nobody knows who I am.
Yeah, I think it's worth it, and I honestly see pressure from leadership at most companies for folks to use more AI at this point. Just outside markets like, oh, it's replacing everyone. Google, Amazon's using 99% of AI to write all their code at this point, and it's becoming easier to sell it, which is nice, because I think it's something that developers want, and it's something that leadership is now seeing that it is saving money.
Thank you.
2 minutes? All right, 2 minutes. Let's rapid fire.
I was wondering if you could talk through the migration process and like what different tools and how you're getting the output of one LLM to go to another.
I'll point you to the look up on Airbnb's tech blog.
Okay.
There's a fairly long blog post of the methodology they used as they went through one of the migrations, and I think it would be much more specific than anything I would give you at this point.
Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope this was useful to you. It was really fun and very sunny.